Hello, dear listeners. I was recently suggested to try Stanley Kauffmann, since I like Pauline Kael. And I got, I think, 3 books of his from the library. And this is the first thing. I just opened up a book and saw Much Ado About Nothing. And I recorded that. And I apologize to the suggester. But as you may be able to tell from my reading, I don't really like him very much. I'll look at some other reviews of his, just to be fair, but I think I'm going to have to say no to Stanley Kauffmann, which somehow wound up in this recording of his review of Much Ado About Nothing, and here, dear listener, it is. Much Ado About Nothing, May 10th, 1993. Silence. Black screen. 3 words appear. Sigh no more. The opening of the lovely song in the play. The rest of the words then follow, and Emma Thompson's voice begins to speak them. The film cuts to a glorious Tuscan hillside, with a picnic of ladies and a few old men spread upon it, and with Thompson nestled in a tree, reading the song from a book. As she finishes, a messenger arrives to report that Don Pedro and friends are returning from the wars. Then, far below, we see a group of galloping riders. Patrick Doyle's score surges in. The ladies rush to bathe and prepare. Under the opening titles, the horsemen arrive and plunge into their baths. And Kenneth Branagh's film of Much Ado About Nothing is off to a marvelous start. If Branagh accomplishes nothing better in his film directing career, and why shouldn't he do more? His Henry V and Much Ado will lodge him securely in the world's gratitude. Much Ado, for reasons given below, is not quite up to the level of Henry, but once again Branagh has adapted Shakespeare dexterously. Once again he has followed Granville Barker's advice about pace in Shakespeare, understanding that the essence of pace is not speed but energy. Once again he has excellent colleagues off-camera, most notably Doyle, that open-throated composer, and the editor Andrew Marcus, who knows how to tip in glimpses of others to give dialogue a balletic lift. Once again, Branagh has his attractive self on screen. Once again, and may I live to type these words 100 times more, there is Emma Thompson. Much Ado, as many have noted, is a peculiar play. First, there's the title. It's both a modest shrug of the author at his own brilliance and an Elizabethan joke. Nothing was probably pronounced nutting, which was a synonym for eavesdropping. But the chief problem is that the 2 most interesting characters are only marginally in the main plot. That plot is about the Claudio hero Don John tangle, which is less interesting. Shakespeare began, we can imagine, with a woman and a man, Beatrice and Benedick, who duel verbally because they enjoy their antagonism and tacitly respect each other for it, and whose facade of mutual dislike is cracked by scheming friends so that the pair are forced to confess their love for each other. But if the author had left it at that, the play would have been less than half as long as it needed to be for his theatre. So, to fill it out, he adopted a plot from several previous works about a maiden, a cousin of Beatrice, falsely accused of lewdness. He interwove it with the Beatrice-Benedick story, using the false identity device that he later used in Othello, adding the dead woman returned to life idea that he used again in The Winter's Tale, and working in some bits with a comic constable whose stupidity delays the truth about the maiden. Then he put together a full-length entertainment for the Globe Theatre. But in one sense to no avail. The interesting characters are still Beatrice and Benedick, which is why Berlioz called his opera by their names. In any production, these two performances must carry the play, and in this film, the two performances are, in quite different ways, absolutely scintillating. Branagh is feisty, persistent, lucid, completely taking. The one thing he is not is elegant. He has few traces of a Renaissance gentleman, but he has the magical ability to blend a modern-day persona with consummate ease in Shakespearean language and action. As for Thompson, I'll try to restrain myself. She has elegance. She has the finest command of inflection and style. She has spirit and soul. She is the first film actress since Katharine Hepburn to make intelligence sexy. She lets us understand that Beatrice, much like Kate in The Taming of the Shrew, behaves as she does because she is employing the only means available to break out of the expected pattern, Daddy's girl up for marital auction. Thompson's Beatrice implies that, much as she loves her cousin Hero, the maligned virgin, she couldn't possibly behave in Hero's docile, male-determined way. She makes herself thorny to the man she wants, and she does it gaily. When Thompson says, "Then there was a star danced, and under that I was born. We can see galaxies wheeling." There is more. After Hero's erstwhile fiancé Claudio has excoriated her, and we know she's innocent, Benedick asks the shocked Beatrice, loyal to her cousin, what he can do for her. Thompson then speaks the two words with which Ellen Terry is said to have stabbed the audience with ice. "Kill Claudio." Ellen, thou shouldst be living at this hour to hear Emma. The entire play/film, dark strands and all, is enclosed in an atmosphere of celebration, a festival for returning warriors. This festive air is well dramatized in Phyllis Dalton's summary costumes. Most of the women's dresses and the men's uniforms are off-white. Many of the actors, too, furnish the screen appealingly. Kate Beckinsale as the pretty puppet Hero, Richard Briers as her father, Brian Blessed as his brother, Imelda Staunton as Hero's attendant, who is unknowingly used to entrap her mistress. But there are 4 lapses in the casting, 3 unfortunate and 1 dire. All are American. Robert Sean Leonard, squint-eyed, plays Claudio, not quite tolerably, pale both in love and in hate. Keanu Reeves, as the villainous Don Juan, knows all his lines and speaks them clearly and gives the sort of performance that makes parents beam at college productions. Denzel Washington plays the Prince of the Returning Warriors. I was advocating colorblind casting some 30 years ago, always with the proviso that a black actor in a white role should demonstrate by talent that the producer would have been misguided not to use him or her. That was in the theater. The proviso, for obvious reasons, is even more pressing in film. Washington is barely adequate, with little of the princely bearing that he showed in Malcolm X. The disaster is Michael Keaton as Dogberry. I simply have no idea of what he was doing, what person he was trying to play. His painful performance proves yet again that Shakespeare's low comedy characters need clowns, actors who are funny in themselves before they begin their parts. Someone like Joe Pesci might possibly have had the shtick to do the thick-headed constable. But Keaton is just a straight actor, sweatingly trying to be funny, with muggings, long pauses, and an ire that may be meant as comic, but seems Keaton's attempt to hide the fear that he is failing. What was the reason for the casting of these Americans? Was it to internationalize the film as a bow to the co-producers, American Playhouse? If so, it was self-evidently short-sighted. We could have seen the forest better without these 4 trees. It's hardly a minor defect, 4 misguided pieces of casting in prominent roles. But Branagh and Thompson and 16 other actors, Doyle's enrapturing music, and Branagh's cinematic grip of the play, inventive, lithe, somehow Shakespearean, are splendid. This Much Ado is a flawed gem, certainly regrettably flawed, still a gem. July 19th and 26th, 1993. In recent weeks, whenever I've been feeling cloudy, a thought has come to cheer me up. Kenneth Branagh exists. Not only has he changed my formerly fixed conviction that Shakespeare cannot be filmed, he has made me happy at having my mind changed. Now a book arrives, his second in a way. The first, a pro tem autobiography called Beginning, is good reading. This is a tie-in volume with the film of Much Ado About Nothing. It contains the screenplay, a congenial introduction by Branagh, including a witty letter from Lewis Carroll to Ellen Terry about the hero calumny plot, 32 pages of color photos, and some production shots. This book sent me back to the film again. It's even better than I remembered. However, the colors in the theater print seemed less vivid than those in the print at the press screening. A few small changes or additions of opinion. It's now even more clear that Branagh's astonishing energy as actor-director makes him the Atlas on whom this world rests. As for Emma Thompson, I watched her carefully in the scenes where she's only an onlooker, and saw how thoroughly she stays in a scene without mucking. 2 previously underprized performances. Lydia Law, Thompson's mother, a woman-in-waiting. Jimmy Ewell, the friar on whose clarity much depends. If there's such a thing as an increase of blandness, Keanu Reeves and Robert Sean Leonard exemplify it in the second time around. Denzel Washington seemed a bit more princely this time, yet not quite up to what he might have done. Michael Keaton is unchanged, still abominable. Branagh's apologia for Keaton in his introduction cuts no ice. Under, beyond, and above all is the way that Branagh's direction links the film to what might be called the Shakespearean motion. As does the play, as do almost all of Shakespeare's plays, the film seems to unroll and unroll and unroll, leading us on and on. One doesn't often cry for pleasure at a film. It happened here. Anachronism note. Bruce T. Johnson of Mill Valley, California, an admirer of this film, writes to point out 2 slips. He wonders whether Benedict could have had a lawn chair in Renaissance Italy, but is willing to overlook the matter, since Shakespeare himself is guilty of harmless anachronisms. I agree. Clocks in ancient Rome, for instance. Then Johnson adds that, early in the film, quote, "We see the women of the estate stripping for their baths. There's a very quick rear view of a deeply tanned extra with a pale white triangle on her backside, clearly the imprint of a bikini bottom." End quote. I missed it. My mind was on higher things. So that was Stanley Kauffman. All right. I'm sorry I did not like him, but I did read one of his for you. And thank anyone who was listening.